Well, Kim, it's great to connect today. We almost overlapped at BYU, Idaho. I was at Rick's from 99 to 2000. Of course, followed your career since then, and I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me today.
I'm happy to. Glad to be here.
So you've had a ton of great experience in academia and in leadership. And as you think back on the lessons you've learned, I'm curious what lesson or two you would most want to pass on to others.
That's a great question. Um, I think the first thing is that we are all leaders. And that means we have responsibilities to do the work of leadership in our families, at work, in our communities, at church. We are all leaders and have leadership responsibilities. So I think that would be the first thing. Um, that in that context, our great example is Jesus Christ, who was the perfect leader. And he gave us all sorts of important, wonderful principles that we can apply in doing the work of leadership. So if I were to say one or two things, that's what it would be. Jesus is our perfect example. He's our perfect leader, and we are all leaders. We have the work of leadership to do in all aspects of our lives.
So as you think back on your leadership experience, what do you think is most important when it comes to embracing this idea that we're all leaders? And how do you be an effective leader?
So first of all is understanding what leadership is. And the way I define it in my course in this new book we've written, it's leadership is the work of mobilizing people in a process of action, learning, and change to improve the long-term viability and vitality of the organization which we're part of in three ways. One, the people in that organization experience increased meaning and purpose and growth, personal growth in their lives. Number two, the purpose of the organization is realized more effectively. And third, the productivity of the organization, all of its resources, is strengthened. So that means that leaders always do good. They're always trying to make things better, no matter what organization they're part of. So that's kind of the starting point. And that's what I've learned is that you need, as a leader, to recognize that you are there. It's your responsibility to do the work of leadership in that way. It's very personal. It's often accomplished one by one, but it also has organizational dimensions to it. But on the personal side, the way I like to think about it is that the work of leadership can best be understood with three metaphors: the soul, the heart, and the mind. And it means that we all have a moral responsibility to do what's right, to do good things, to help people, lift them, to strengthen them and help them find meaning and purpose, to strengthen the organizations we're part of by doing good things that's right, they're right. Second thing about the heart is that the heart is about helping people thrive. That means that they experience, we use a little acronym called LIVE, live, which is love, inspiration, vitality, expression. People need these kinds of experiences. They need to be loved. They need to be inspired. They need to have vitality, that is emotional and physical energy. They need to find expression. They need to use their agency to create. And we as leaders need to create the context and help them pursue those things, help them experience that so they can thrive. And the last one is mind. And the mind is about, planning, organizing, making decisions, allocating resources, those kinds of things. But you do that in the context of exercising power through the people rather than over the people. And if you do those three things, if you do what's right, if you seek to do moral work, you help people thrive, and you exercise the mind of leadership by activating the power that's in other people, you will be a very effective leader. That's what I believe.
So, this perspective you have on leadership, is this something you learned while you were a professor at HBS? Is it something you developed as you were dean or later as you were president of BYU Idaho?
Yes, all of the above. In my research, really early on in my time doing research, I realized unexpectedly, because I did a PhD in economics, and in economics, leadership doesn't really have much role to play, at least in the way it used to be taught. Today, people start to recognize it's important. And so I found out early on as I started studying innovation and productivity and so forth in organizations that leaders have a huge impact on things. So I began to look and try to understand leadership. And of course, I had leadership responsibilities in my life. So I learned by experience, sometimes hard experience, about that. And then I was given opportunities. I became dean of the Harvard Business School, and that was a huge, huge kind of educational experience in leadership. And I learned these principles. I mean, I read, I taught, I watched other people. I learned a lot from great leaders, and then I practiced and learned both at HBS, but also at BYU, Idaho, and also in my experiences in the church since then. So yes, all of those experiences, kind of a culmination both of research and writing and teaching. I mean, I've taught thousands of students over my life and about these principles and seen them in action and on boards and consulting and all sorts of experiences. And it kind of distilled down, these is what I believe.
So, maybe last two questions. One, what is the hardest thing for you as you try to apply this approach? And then two, do you have any, as you think back on how you've applied this, do you have any success stories or anything you're most proud of as you've applied these lessons?
Yeah. I think the fundamental aspect that's hard is that the work of leadership is done by and with and through real human beings who are, the way I think about real human beings, they are kind of um, pulled to do things that are wrong, and they're pulled to do things that are right. And there's kind of this battle that goes on in their hearts and minds. And I think most people want to do good things. They want to experience, uh, you know, growth and learning and having meaning in their lives, but they also have these other forces at work in them. And so it's real people. And, to motivate, to mobilize, to teach, to lift people, you try to do that as a leader, but sometimes they do things that they shouldn't do, and you have to deal with that. This is the lesson I've learned about that. And then I'll give you an example. When you have to deal with people who have, for whatever reason, made decisions that are not right, that have either damaged themselves or other people or the organization, you have to deal with it in a way that increases what I call organizational light, which means you can't just deal with it in a kind of natural man way, like your natural instincts. You have to take action, yes, but you got to do it in a way that increases the light in the organization, that makes people feel stronger, better, more confident. You can't be arbitrary. You can't be angry. You can't be revengeful. You can't be harsh and unfeeling about dealing with people who have made mistakes. And so you've got to deal with it in the right way. And when you do that, you actually strengthen the organization. So, personal example, this one, is a um, it's not a huge example, but it captures the principle. So just before I became dean of HBS, I worked in a department in the school, and there was a person that worked in that department who, for a number of years, had been kind of poison. This person was angry all the time, mean, didn't do the work right. It was really a tough situation. And we tried as best we could to do everything that the HR organization told us to do. We documented, we did all those things. But this was a real problem. It was causing a lot of morale issues and disrupting the organization. And they wouldn't take any action. They wouldn't do anything about it. And that was so frustrating to the people who worked there. I became dean. And I think like day one, I sat down with the HR director and asked about this situation. The director of HR told me that, well, the reason they haven't taken action is that they were afraid that if they took this action, they would end up in a legal battle with the union. All these workers were unionized. And it would lead to a real significant legal problem, and that we just needed to kind of work it out, and probably this person would leave at some point. And I said, okay, you've sketched out two kind of paths, path A, path B. Path A is we have done everything we possibly can to help this person, and the person has not responded. So we let them go. And then 3 years down the road, we may face some legal action by the union. Or plan B is the person stays, morale suffers, productivity suffers, everybody's unhappy. I pick plan A. I want you to go down and take the action that we should have taken these years ago and ask this person to leave. They did. Well, the organization, the department was, I mean, they were so glad and things got much better. And then you know what happened? The union leaders said to us, "What took you so long?" And so I realized, we actually helped that person because we had counsel with that person, training, no response. But by removing that person from the organization, gave them a chance to go somewhere else and start fresh. The rest of the organization was overjoyed. I just realized, if you do it the right way, you can make everybody better off if you're careful and thoughtful about how to do it.
So I've been teaching leadership for a number of years, and it seems like for many of us, our approach to leadership is just what we've seen. It's what we've witnessed, or leaders try to guess what their followers or others in the organization want them to do, and so they're just trying to fulfill, mind read the expectations of others. And I really like this approach of what can I do to increase the light in the organization? And
Right.
using that framework, that's a much better framework than, I'm just going to model, the previous leaders I've had, or I'm just going to behave in the way that others want me to behave.
So we do have two concepts. One is light, one is darkness. Organizational light are actions that lift people, that strengthen the organization, increase clarity, understanding, make it better. Things like high standards and empathy and kindness and generosity, but also using the people effectively. I mean, how many organizations can say, well, my people are being used to the maximum of their potential? Hardly any.
Yeah.
But when you take action to allow people to get in situations and help them grow and learn, it's just light. Darkness is like, I mean, it's like attacks on the organization. Darkness are actions that damage people, contempt, well, even discrimination, backbiting, taking credit for something you didn't do, lying, all those things that happen in organizations. It's like dark. It's like attacks. And so what you say to leaders is, look, your job is to generate light, create light, and drive out darkness. And it's pretty simple. It's real hard. It's difficult. It's not easy, but it clarifies this is what you do, at least on the soul of leadership. But then you can help people, with heart and mind, take action that moves things forward and helps people thrive.
Yeah, I really like this approach because in the academic uh, research on leadership, I've not seen it phrased quite like this, light and dark. Talk about consideration or social factors, and it's more the kind of mechanics of leadership. But when it comes down to it, if you are treating people the right way, if you're focusing on these dimensions of light, treating people the right way, helping them out, and driving out the dark, driving out the backbiting or the credit stealing, uh, ultimately your organization is probably going to thrive if you're just
Oh yeah.
trying, yeah, just trying to increase light.
Yeah. Now you have to make decisions, you have to you have to allocate resources, you have to do all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I think it makes a huge difference. This is why we call our book Leading Through. That's the name of the book. And the idea is instead of the dominant paradigm of power over people, what we really need is leadership that's based on leading through people and through change to bring about light and help people thrive and help the organization flourish. That's what it's about.
Well, any last thing you want to say as we wrap up here?
Well, I would say to people who are listening, I would say, take heart. It's the world is really confusing at times, and there's turbulence and commotion and all sorts of things going on. But if you have the will and the desire to be an effective leader, you can do it. You can do it, and you'll make a big difference in people's lives. It's worth it.
Great. Kim, really appreciate your time. I look forward to sharing these lessons with my family, students, and all the listeners. So thank you so much for sharing these lessons today.
You're welcome. Great to be with you.